There he
Mine
is.
says,
Oh, any announcements for all of us here?
Well, first of all, let me thank Patrick for putting on a presentation, much appreciated by myself and all the members. I just like to say a few words on behalf of Mary Miller. I know, David, you put together a GoFundMe for Mary Miller, and they've had a tough time over the last 5 or 6 years, and anything we could do to help them would be really appreciated. David, I want to thank you for putting the fund together, and for any of those that have been members for the last quarter century, realize that Mary Miller and Bill Miller contribute hundreds and hundreds of hours to the getting the Papa system where it's at today. And so a little bit of a contribution will go a long way to help Mary through this rough time that she's having. So I would ask for those of you that knew him and Bill Miller and Mary to contribute a little to their GoFund. The other thing is I want to thank all the Papa members that have been heeding the requests from all of us regarding using your call sign when you want to get involved in a conversation. Just a comment without a call sign is not acceptable. And since we've got a large group today, I thought I'd ask once again, if you want to get into the conversation, just please give your call sign. No comment is necessary. Call sign who's ever talking will recognize you. Okay, I think, oh, one other thing. I just want to give you guys heads up on and gals. For all of those that took the time to sign up to Amazon Smile, it's going a long ways in help funding a lot of the Papa projects. It's we're probably averaging between $1,200 and $1,500 a year in funds from Amazon Smile. For those that are not aware how simple it is, just visit the Papa website. If you're ordering stuff from Amazon, every dollar you spent, a 0.5% is contributed to the Papa since it's a 501c3. That's all I got. Go ahead, Mr. Dave.
Well, thank you, Cecil. And I wanted to second your suggestion about going to the GoFundMe site for Mary Miller. The link is on the Papa System website. I got it up there. Mary set up her ability to withdraw. I have nothing to do with any of that part. I just got the GoFundMe set up, and I worked with Mary, and she put up a little thing there, a statement about Bill, and I think it was very poignant, and I really am so privileged to be able to participate in that. And I would hope that all of the Papa System members would go there and just contribute a little bit. It goes a long ways, and you'll send your love and prayers to Mary and her family, her animals that are there that will benefit as well. Anyway, thank you for that. This is David, KK6M, and I'm happy to bring to you Patrick, working on his amateur radio call sign. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Geochron, just as an introduction. Geochron K4s, you got little computers that you hook up through a HDMI cable to a big screen, and then you can have something like I have right in my background. See back there? Something like that on your wall. And there's a lot of other apps, amateur radio apps that Patrick will probably go into. And it's because it's computer interface based. There's a lot of apps that can be integrated in the future. And I think Tamitha maybe can comment on that later. I saw her here, and I wanted to welcome Tamitha Scove to our meeting as well. So there's going to be some space weather stuff on the Geochron, I'm hoping. Yeah, he's shaking his head. Yeah, there's some really exciting things coming up that are going to be available with the Geochron. Traditionally, the Geochron was a mechanical device. It was just an absolutely fabulous piece of gear. It's like a mechanical watch, like this thing. Where it's all the little movements inside, and it was the only mechanical watch that showed daytime, the nighttime, with the gray line in the world. It was the first one, mechanical, and it was they even had one in the White House. And then somewhere, I don't know what year it was, when Patrick bought Geochron and moved everything to Oregon, that they introduced a K4, a little interface, and this thing's really taken off. Anyway, without further ado, I wanted to introduce Patrick at Geochron. Go ahead, sir.
Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Good Saturday morning. So I'm sitting here in Portland, Oregon, and this is one of my favorite things to do. Painting houses is not my gig, but I can do it. But I love talking about to Geochron. And is Michael Sage here? He's here? I had a chance to visit him in person in his fabulous ham shack about a month ago, and he schooled me on everything that ham radio guys want to see, and most of all, he said you need to get your call sign. So, so I've been I've been studying. You can see it here, but it's more work than I thought. So I'm not quite done, but I'm like halfway through the book, and then I'll take the test. So hopefully next time I talk to you, I'll have some stuff. So I'm going to jump into a bunch of slides that I put together that talks about the history of Geochron, and then get into the ham radio layers that we're just wrapping up right now. This is the first time that I've talked publicly about what's in the ham radio layer, and I'm really looking forward to getting your feedback. I did have a chance to show Michael KN6EWM some of the layers, and he's like, "You gotta tell Pop Systems about this." So here we are. I'm going to share my screen now. Just a moment. Okay, good. So I'm coming to you from my office. This is where I'm sitting. Unfortunately, the background doesn't look very good, but what you see behind me right now in my picture, the green, is actually close-up screenshots of the Geochron, and some of the layers that I'm going to be talking about in just a moment. One of the problems with online presentations is that the Geochron is in 4K, and you're only viewing this in like 640 or 960 or 1080, but the 4K is beautiful and really brilliant and glittery. So to get down into the detail, I got to zoom in. So that's kind of like eye candy behind me. A lot of you should recognize what you're seeing. So there's my office, and it's here in Portland. I work with several developers that are here in Portland on the Geochron Digital. Tegan and Andrew, they're both my buddies. They come over here every Monday, and we talk about what's going on in my office, and then they send them back to their home offices. So, but the Geochron has a much longer legacy than that. This is a picture of James Earl Jones from the set of The Hunt for Red October with one of those beautiful mechanical clocks in the background. And this was long before I got involved with the company, but it's been in lots of movies, just the mechanical version of the clock, which started in 1964. A couple of weeks ago, one of the first owner of Geochron, who is the young boy, okay, so pictured here, you can see the Geochron on the right, on next to President Reagan, and then the old guy is James Kilberg, and he's the inventor of the clock, and he is deceased. But the clock started in, I think, was it Delta Airline air lounges, airport lounges back then. And then he passed the company to his younger son, whom Reagan has his hands on. I've been looking for this photo for years, and finally, he reached out to me. Bill did, Bill Kilberg, and said, "Hey, I heard you were looking for this photo." So everybody who's been involved with Geochron has, this is sort of like a company that is a labor of love and sort of a passion, because it's not, I'll explain later, but we're just a really small business, and so the previous owners will constantly touch base with me and say, "How you guys doing?" And they're all excited to hear about the 4K too when I talk to them. So the mechanical version of the clock looks like this on the inside. This is a 3D um, look at it. There are 300 parts inside the clock. Many of them are sheet metal, and they all work together. The map moves. It's a Lexan map that's 6 feet long, developed in a dark room when it's printed with backlit LED lights. And it is a thing of beauty. Here's a picture of the inside of the clock as we are building one. Those shades, the gray line, form the gray line. And this is what made the clock popular. with ham radio guys. Before the internet, the only way to know or to have a beautiful display in your ham shack was to have a Geochron. So it's sort of like the king of the ham shack, and it was like that in 1970, 1980, 1990, and then the internet came, and then all this stuff you can get online. But we still make a lot of the mechanical clocks today. Most of our work is restoring these clocks. This is an example of the mech plate that's inside the clock. So we restore about 250 to 300 clocks per year, and we build about 100 clocks per year custom. The mechanical clocks are much more expensive because of all the handiwork and the parts. Good grief. The parts are expensive. Many of them are made here in Portland at various machine shops, and we make some too. But the inflation is nipping at our heels all the time when it comes to making the mechanical clock. Were it not for the generosity of the previous owners and my own generosity at times, the mechanical clock would have closed a long time ago. It's just running a boutique manufacturing outfit in the United States is a tough chore. But the clock is beautiful, and we've done some new designs to it with stepper motors. But what it turns into is something that looks like this, which you can see behind KK6M. And this is an example of a limited edition. It's about the size of a 38-inch TV, and the map moves at 1 inch an hour from left to right, and was the basis of how we brought about the digital clock. So people send me pictures all the time of what their installations look like, both mechanical and digital, and I'll show you some digital ones a little bit later on. But here's one that was the 2020 prize winner. We give away a Geochron Atlas, which is the digital version, to everybody to the winners of every category. And this guy is a patent attorney down in Texas, and he was very proud of his installation, which I would say it's the best one I've ever seen. That's fantastic. So last year, just before COVID, we moved from Portland, trying to escape high rents, into an outlying city, kind of like a little mountain town of Estacada, which is outside Portland, into a little building that I bought because I got tired of paying really high rents. And so we put a women's clothing store in the front, and in the back, you have Geochron Mechanical. So Geochron Mechanical and Geochron Digital don't cross much. Geochron Digital is mostly home-based, but Geochron Mechanical needs at least 2,000 square feet to work on all those clocks. And but here's the whole team as it goes. So I'm standing there in the blue shirt, and then Amalia, and we have 2 techs, 1 admin, and then the coders are standing in the back. So these are my people. This is my church. Geochron is my church right now, and we're constantly in contact, and I see them all the time. So just like, kind of employees, kind of friends, everybody here is because we love the clock in its digital or mechanical form. So last bit of background about the business. This is a really small business, as you can see. And so here's a quick story. Portland in 2020, as you probably all know, had a really hard year. Not just with like occasional rioting downtown, but we also had a terrible forest fire that burned within a mile of my shop. So I drove to the shop in the middle of the fire just to make sure it was still there. It was a big forest fire. And this is a picture that I took out of the front of my window. On the same day, UPS delivered a bunch of computers to my house. Now, these are computers that we eventually make into the Geochron Atlas 4K, and then just didn't tell anybody, just left them at my front doorstep. And there were rumors of looting that were going on outside of town because people were getting mandatory evacuation notices, and there weren't enough sheriffs to cover all that distance. So I moved that all into my house, all the boxes into my house, and then we got a mandatory evacuation notice because they thought the city might burn down. That the town of Oregon City, where I live, which is just outside Portland. And so I'm like, well, I am not leaving with $250,000 worth of computers sitting in my front room. And so I loaded them. So my family left for Seattle to go hang out with the in-laws, and I stayed back and spent the night just going, I need to find a place for these because I'm not leaving the house. I'm not leaving these unguarded. And so I found a friend with a warehouse downtown, loaded them in the back of my Ranger pickup. Every Atlas that's sold has been in the back of that truck as I deliver it to the fulfillment center where they get shipped out in downtown Portland. And my buddy had a warehouse downtown, and he took them off my hands for the duration so I could leave, so I could evacuate my house. But this is this is how it goes. I imagine many of you are small business owners or at one time or worked for a small company. This is how it goes. This is how it's been ever since I took over the company, and I'm in 6 years now. So, okay. But it gives me a lot of opportunities to visit really cool people. Like here you have Michael, and I visited him down in California, and I took that picture and I showed him a bunch of new layers, and he talked my ear off for 3 or 4 hours, schooling me on what ham radio guys wanted to see. So that has been a lot of fun. I like visiting people wherever I go that are Geochron. I like to think of them as super fans. But with the machine shop taken care of, we developed a digital version, and this was about 3 years ago. I would go to trade shows talking up the mechanical, and then people would be like, "That's so crazy expensive! Don't you, isn't that an app?" And I'm like, "No, it's not digital." But the truth is the market really needed a digital version. The Geochron Digital is to the Geochron Mechanical like Buzz Lightyear is to Woody in Toy Story, if you've seen that movie. So Woody has got this mechanical loveliness that you can't, charisma that you can't deny. But the digital, it is a lot of cool bells and whistles that you'd see with Buzz Lightyear. And it has been picked up. So people send me pictures all the time. This is a screenshot from somebody. Here's astronaut Scott Kelly, who is using a backdrop as a Geochron in one of his television interviews, which is really cool. I'm going to stop screen sharing it just for a second. And I want to show you something that Scott Kelly sent me. So he sent me this little card that says, "Patrick, thank you for the new Geochron. This pin flew in space with me on my year-long mission." And here's the little NASA pin, which I think is the coolest thing ever. So I have that here in my office. I'm super proud of it. Like, that is the best memento ever. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you see Scott Kelly. That guy's a rock star. Thanks. So the Geochron Digital is a small Intel quad-core computer. It's about as powerful as the PC or the laptop that you use at home, except it is fanless and solid state. So it's quiet and it exhausts heat as long as you don't put it into a closed area. And with it, you connect it with an HDMI cable into your 4K screen. It'll work with 1080, but I'll tell you, it just doesn't look very good because it's designed for 4K. It'll look like if you plug it into a 1080 screen or an HD or UHD TV, it looks like watercolors. It looks. Please don't put it on a 4K because that's what it's designed for, and all the crisp detail will come out. So yeah. So what we started doing in the beginning was adding some layers that just everybody was asking to see. And here's an example of, and I'll just say we're in a geopolitical map set. We have, you see the arc of the International Space Station and its live location. It looks like those are a bunch of, those are ham radio satellites in their live location as they are careening through space at 6 miles a second. And the blue swaths and a little bit of white that you see over the oceans and like crossing the East Coast and India, for sure. That blue is where it's actively raining on Earth. We get that from NOAA. NOAA has an API that we tap into and then deliver that weather in real time, satellite weather, to our all the geochrons that are out there. And that's just for free. Here's another example of weather satellites. Any trackable satellite can be seen on the Geochron, except the military ones. And so here's an example of weather, active precipitation, and the weather satellites. Also, this is a topographical map set. All the map sets are available, and ham radio is too, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Also, over here on the side, you can see little lines off the coast of Brazil and encircling South America. And that's just a new thing that we added. Those are submarine data cables. So when you send an email to somebody in Europe, or when you're downloading a website from Asia, then it's traveling over those cables. It's just a great way to see like the whole world is so alive and there's so much movement in the world. And also people asked for COVID. So COVID, this is an older screenshot, but countries through Johns Hopkins University will report all of their COVID fatalities and infections. And so we have a big graphical map that shows that as part of the Geochron if you want that. So here's what it looks like in the big picture, the things that I've just talked about in high speed. So you can see satellites are kind of running across. This is back in, you can see the time on the left-hand side going super fast, but that gives you an idea of how the Geochron works in Earth time, not in our time. So in this map, that is topographical with last 30 days launches, COVID, and precipitation. That's what you're seeing in that one. But there are many, many combinations. One of those combinations is the aviation layer, which is new to this year. In this screenshot on the right-hand side, you can see all the active flights for United Airlines. At the time, you can see above there are about 7,771 commercial air flights that were in flight, but now, that was like 6 months ago that I made this graphic, but now there's like 11,000. So the world is waking back up. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see other ones like UPS, who definitely has a distribution hub, and then Hawaiian Airlines, and you can separate between all these different airlines and see them in real time. Here's another picture just yesterday from United Airlines at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Busy, busy. And like I said, all the airlines can be seen. So on the overall picture, this is kind of what it looks like if on the Geochron. You can see. So what I'm looking at here are some ham radio widgets, which I'll talk about in just a minute. There's the blue of the precipitation. Whoops, I did that just a second. Blue of the precipitation, and then we have all the European airlines that are bunched together, mostly flying in Europe, but also some in Asia, North America, and Southeast Asia. And that is the grayscale mode, which helps see the layers above the base map. That's why the map is in gray here. That's another feature on the Geochron. We've added a couple other things like moon layers, and people want to know what's going on with the moon. So it's up there in the corner if you want it. And then also coming out and just sent to our beta testers yesterday, this is the first time I've talked about it publicly, is an earthquake layer that's coming up. So this is yesterday. And I don't know. Oh, just a moment. There we go. So this is yesterday, and we've got earthquakes happening off the coast of Australia. This comes from the USGS survey and her international affiliates. The reporting in North America is much better because the Americans, like us, we have really good reporting mechanisms through the US Geological Survey. And then, so by the way, this is like the last 24 hours. There's earthquakes going on all the time. I was shocked. I had no idea. But the Geochron Digital is really a perfect way to show that. And then over here, a widget that shows the last 10 to 13 major earthquakes. And that is updated every 15 minutes. So that's earthquake layer. And then other people have taken this and they've turned it into something really cool. So like BRG Products in Oklahoma sells to the government, their big fancy clocks. And he got one of my digitals and he liked it. And so he integrated it into a hybrid clock that is programmable that he sells to consumers who like want the ultimate clock, and then also to the US government. We've sold, I don't know, a couple to the Space Force. They use them in their conference room so they can show how awesome they are. So anyways, I'm proud of that too. Okay, and then people send me pictures all the time. Here's an example of W3GXN, who sent me this really great picture of his ham shack. Also, another one, I just get these almost every day. Super happy about it. And I couldn't stage these to save my life. It's so great to have these. This is why I run a contest every year, just to be so I can use these photos to show you guys what it looks like. The ham radio premium layers. Okay, so this is the first time I've talked about it. So this is a good trail run. I want your advice, really, when I'm done here. Please tell me what you think, because we're just in the process of putting the final touches on it. And I want to make sure I got it right. To do this, we start with a base layer map. Then this, you should all recognize this. This is a ham radio map. There it is. And then this is in the geopolitical mode. So the first thing that we've done with the ham radio layers is everybody who wanted a way to upload their ADIF logs. Many of you use software logging and you want to see where you're going and so where you've been. And so there's filters. There's through our website, you can upload your file to the Geochron that is in front of you, and then you can see your contacts, not just without the call signs, but with the call signs as well. And here's an example of what that looks like. So it can get busy. We can't show all the contacts. You can see like in the lower right-hand corner where it says Q, everything that's in that Maidenhead grid, there are, I don't know, maybe 9 that are shown there, but then another 13 that we cannot show. But the thing is that when somebody walks into your shack and you say, and they say, what is this and what do? You just point at the Geochron and say, this is where I've been. Look at all the stuff that I've done. And then DXing. This is something that really we've received many requests for. There's an old Telnet network that a ham radio enthusiast was kind enough to tell us where to find it on the internet. And then we took that and we ported it into the Geochron so that you can, by band and by color, similar to dxmaps.com, see where the live traffic is going on right now on your Geochron. And it's updated every, I think, 15 minutes. You can see it with call signs or you can see it without call signs. It can get really cluttered. You can filter out bands. You can add bands. You can see yours. Here's an example of what it looks like. And this was just last week. But it's so fascinating because it changes all the time as different bands open up according to the atmospheric conditions, solar conditions, and the MUF layer, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So much activity between you guys that it's really cool to see what's open and where in real time. And then you can flip back and forth between where you've been and see your ADIF logs. And then you can go and check out where everybody else is going right now. Now, it doesn't show everybody because that just wouldn't fit in the screen because there's just tens of thousands of us. But this is a perfect way. The Geochron was just built for this. So we're super excited about that. I think it looks great. It's like a game of Missile Command. It's fantastic. Okay, so it does get cluttered. So you can filter by band, and the bands are shown that we are showing are down here in the legend below. Here's another example of what it looks like for North America. This is just with a bunch of bands that have been filtered out, but I imagine like you'd be like, oh yeah, W8WTS, that guy's awesome, right? Oh, I can see he's online right now. That's sweet. So here's an example of what that looks like from the menu. The Geochron is operated from a little remote control that just fits in your hand. It looks like a TV remote, and you can go through and you can click through the options that you want. Give the Geochron a second. It'll load down your platform from the server, and then boom, your ham shack is now an information portal to the rest of the world. Looks great. So we've tried to add everything that people were asking for, including the reverse beacon network. All right. Here is also amateur radio satellites, according to AMSAT, that will be a part of the ham radio package too. So this is the ham radio satellites over a base map of the ham radio map. Also, because this was easy to do, because it's already been done, we ported in a lot of the solar terrestrial data that's largely available online, and we thought, why couldn't that be available from Paul on the Geochron as well? I know many of you have already seen this. We're also adding planetary locations just because it's really cool looking, but it also shows the solar wind conditions and geomagnetic influences for our own planet here in the solar system. And the Aurora Forecast, this comes from NOAA, of course. Everybody's excited to see that as well. So in the green screen that you've seen behind me, on occasion, as I've been talking, is the MUF layer. And we just got this done yesterday. So the person who made this layer was very kind to show us where it was online, and we were able to fit it into our Mercator projection for the Geochron. And so this is an overlay screenshot from the Geochron itself. And I'll admit, this is a little above my pay grade to understand what this all means. And so, but if maybe someone could like get on the phone with me and explain it again, because I'm not very good at explaining this one. But you can see that the MUF layer is, so the circles are the reporting locations where they are, where they're getting the information from the, I think it's the ionosphere, to find out where the maximum usable layer, usable frequency is. And then they're putting that together in a topo style map, which we've added with additional detail, which you could see in color, according to the legend that is down there in the lower left. Although I think we're going to move that to the upper right and make it vertical, because it'll be clearer for the people who are viewing it. All right. So we've taken all those things together, and this has just been what people have been asking for about a year now. We're very small, so it takes us time to work through all these layers and also do customer support and build our clocks. And again, I just love these pictures that people send me. I think this one's in Europe. And this guy is a pilot for Spirit Airlines, and he's just about an hour south of me down in Eugene. So, and then we've just more excellent pictures about how people are using the Geochron Digital to see the gray line in real time, but much more than that. Now you can see the rest of the world and what your other guys are doing, what other ham-rated people are doing, and how you can reach them. So that's all the pictures that I have. If you go to subscribe to our newsletter at geochron.com, and a little pop-up will arrive, then I'll immediately send you a 10% discount code on either the Atlas 1 or the Atlas 2. The Atlas 1 will do all this stuff, but the Atlas 2 is faster. It's a new one. And I think we've got, I just want to open this up for questions and just talk my ear off about what you've just seen. This is the first time I've talked about the ham radio layer specifically in public. So please tell me what you think.
Whiskey Oscar 6 Alpha.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Now, what's your question?
Thank you. Two questions. I guess one is a feedback. I think the putting the maximum usable frequency layer graphic in there is very useful. I like that a lot. So immediate feedback is someone using HF, which I use quite a bit of HF. I spend a lot of time on HF.
Yeah.
I think it's a very useful layer. I also like the idea of having, typically when I'm using HF, I am doing targets of who I'm talking to. And really, it's mostly looking for clusters, where the clusters are, again, in propagation. So having the displays of where the clustering is and the propagation and the bands, that view is also very useful. Question for you is, I'm wondering if you guys have looked at, as a computer, it looks like it plugs in using an HDMI. And I'm wondering, do you have situations where people will use that connected to another computer, like a Mac or things like that, versus buying a dedicated display for it? And I'm wondering just what kind of experience do you have with the setups that allow people to use the existing setups they have at home versus buying separate dedicated displays?
Sure. Every 4K TV is going to have a number of HDMI ports, between 3 and 5 probably. And so sometimes people will have a dedicated port just for the Geochron and the HDMI that it plugs in. And then when they want to watch TV or watch something else, they just switch to the next port using the TV's remote.
Thank you so much for the talk today. This was my first real understanding of how Geochron works and some of the power that you've already implemented. I mean, things like airline flights and submarine cables and things like that show us our connectivity, as well as satellites. These are fascinating, and they're so relevant to where we're going technologically. And so I have, I know you're including the Aurora Forecast. Believe it or not, there's actually versions of the Ovation Forecast that are already laid out on a map for you, so you don't have to just overlay an Ovation, global plot, just a world view of it. You can actually have the Aurora itself as a band that goes all the way across the screen in the digital version. So it could actually integrate into your map as a layer that is far more, pretty from that perspective. If you're interested, there's lots of places that information can be gotten. And also something for solar flares and radiation storms. as the solar cycle begins to ramp up, I know we've had a conversation about DRAP, this DRAP
Yes.
model. It is a Space Weather Prediction Center product. It is a massive benefit to ham radio operators, especially those working the HF frequencies, but also to some degree UHF and VHF as well. It also helps with auroral propagation, especially I should say auroral zone propagation in the case of radiation storms. So that's a tool that would be extremely useful. I don't know if you would want to put that, and let me just ask you, just kind of if you have an idea, would you want to include something like that in the ham radio package, or would you like to make maybe a space weather package in of itself? Because a space weather package would actually be useful to aviation community, useful to the Space Force, useful to the satellite industry. I mean, space weather affects a lot more people other than hams, although ham radio operators are a huge contingent of that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So space weather, space
Sorry.
weather package. No one said that term to me before. That's really great. But the DRAP. So I did, Tamitha, I did take that to the developers and I said, okay, check this out. Can we do this? And then I looked up on it and I kind of read up and now I understand what it is. I had no idea that conditions change so quickly. Yeah, in the DRAP layer, it's pretty exciting, and all that movement makes it much more attractive for Geochron to add. So, and the answer is yes, we can do that, but the truth that we're trying to, we can't do it right now because we're at capacity is trying to get the ham radio layer stuff together. But that was a super great suggestion, and it's on my here, I show this to everybody. It's on my to-do list. So here it is. It's on my oh, I can't show it. But anyway, I have a huge to-do list. So yeah, I really like that suggestion, Tamitha. Thanks.
That's one other thing I'll mention just out in the open for everybody really quickly, and then I'll shut up, is that if we're able to put together something like that, I would actually be, if you'd allow me, I would actually show some of that in my forecasts and actually have Geochron's label right there in my forecast. So you'd be getting like ham radio people saying, where is she getting this information? And I said, well, just get a Geochron clock.
All right. Love it. We're going to connect later about that. Always looking for trying to get the word out about Geochron. Nobody else is doing this. Nobody else does this. You can find it on a browser, but you can't find it in one single 4K display. And so this is exciting. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Patrick about if he can access the API for PSK Reporter. So Patrick, if you're doing digital in ham radio using a protocol called FT8 or FT4, or even PSK Reporter or PSK, any of the modes, there's a corresponding website called PSK Reporter. I believe it's .info. And it basically takes your transmit data that's received at another ham location and it populates it on a map. So you can look at where you're being sent to, and you can see who's hearing you. It's a great propagation tool. So if you send out a CQ, you can instantly, within a couple minutes, see where in the world somebody is actually hearing you. And for me to have that on my Geochron would be fantastic, as opposed to tying up a computer screen, and flipping back and forth on a browser. It takes a lot of resource if you're looking at it on a regular basis. So that's one. And then the second part of the question is, I've got the original Geochron, and it's upgraded to version 2 software, which I'm assuming will accept these new layers. But what's the process if I wanted to convert that to an Atlas? Is there a path?
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned the PSK Reporter, because it tells me that I'm on the right track. So I know the PSK Reporter. I haven't reached out to them to try to find out how to get to that API. But when I was introduced to that concept, and my understanding of it is that the DX that we're showing is sort of like, is more like last generation analog, and the PSK Reporter is now the digital means through FT8. And the Geochron, again, is perfect to be displaying that kind of stuff. We weren't able to integrate it into this development round, but I think you'll see it come up in a future development round, because it's perfect for that. Let's do that. So that's good. It's also on the list for me. So thank you for confirming that right direction. In regards to the different iterations of Geochron Digital, there are two main iterations. One is the one that you have displayed behind you, which is the version 2. In my lingo, that's called the version 2. So that runs on a slower processor than the Atlas series, and this is the Atlas here that I've got in my hand. This is the Intel quad core. So the version 2 will not run the layers the newer layers that are coming out that I've been talking about. It just, the hamsters are not fast enough. We tried and we tried and we tried because we hate excluding people that already have the older versions from a year or two ago, but they just aren't, there's not enough processing power in the version 2 to do that. But if you go to the website underneath the digital heading and look up upgrade, there are a couple different upgrade paths. So depending on what unit you have, if you want to get to the Atlas, whether that's the Atlas 1 or the Atlas 2, we want to make that as easy for you as possible because we want people to have these new layers. This is just the progress of technology. And as we continue to build new options on the Geochron, the older hardware can't handle it. It breaks my heart. I didn't like that, but this is where it is. But if you go to the website, I'll do my best to help it.
Craig will have to buy a new one. Isn't that right, Craig?
Exactly, but that's okay. I'll use this in a different location.
we keep saying it's like going to Apple and saying, "Hey, I've got an Apple II. How come it doesn't work like an Apple 12? What's up?" Like they're like, "Well, the world changed." So this is I didn't have a background in. I mean, I've always been a gadgety guy, but I don't have a background in running tech businesses or even working for a tech business. So all this stuff is brand new to me. I'm definitely a novice. We just try to do the best with who we have. Fortunately, we've got a good team that tells me what to do.
It's a fantastic product, and we all want you to succeed. So,
yeah,
I'm an evangelist when somebody asks me. So it's great.
Could you please give us the site where we get the 10% discount?
Yep, geochron.com, geochron.com.
Yeah, I'm going to use that site myself. Anyone else?
And we just we go for the Atlas model. That's the best one.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
version 2 is no longer available. It's old model, but there's an Atlas 1 and an Atlas 2 option.
Yeah, and that's the top one right now that has everything.
Number 2 is Atlas 2. Now, let me be clear about this. The ham radio layer is not yet deployed. That's coming up in like a month or two. Earthquake is not deployed. Also, ham radio layer, when it goes out, it'll be a trial period. But so a little business for me is that all the data that I showed you, except the ham radio layer and the earthquake layer, is just provided free for the life of the unit as we distribute all that data to you. But the ham radio layer will come at some cost, a small cost, like an annual or monthly cost. And I haven't decided what that's going to be. I know that I've been told, and I have seen that ham radio guys are really cheap. So I'm not sure how to do this, but if you want to email me and like, I would really appreciate some feedback about what this kind of thing should cost. What, like maybe like a comparable software package for stuff that you already use, but it cost me lots of money to pay the developers to put that all together, and it will cost me continuing money to deliver that data to you and to keep those pipes open. So I'm saying like under $10, like it's not going to be like under $5-10 a month. I don't know. This is kind of where I'm at. This is the first time I've publicly talked about it, but please give me feedback about what that's worth, because I have to charge a little bit for that.
I was curious as to whether or not this is an ESRI engine driving this, and also the costs of the mechanical and the digital versions.
Sure. I am familiar with ESRI, but I don't have any affiliation with them, and we're not using their engines at all. This is all Geochron. So we did this from the ground up, which is why we're adding layers. I hope to integrate with ESRI and some of those other platforms in the future, but that takes a room full of developers, which I just have. There's just 2 of them and me. So that's the first one. The second question is, how much does it cost? So the Geochron mechanical clock costs between $2,000 and $4,000. That's because it's just the parts are most of the expense. It's very expensive to make those parts in the United States at small quantities like we have. The Geochron Digital, the retail price for the Atlas 2 is $449, and the Atlas 1 is $399. And I will tell you about the Atlas 1, which I've got here in my hand. The Atlas 1 is in limited stock, so I've only got, there's some on Amazon. I think I've got like maybe 30 left on Amazon that we built and sent to them, and then also from our website there are maybe 20 left, and then the Atlas ones are going to be all sold, and then we'll just be moving to Atlas 2. But if you go to geochron.com and give us your email address, you'll subscribe to the newsletter. My newsletters are really good. They're not full of junk, but you also within a few minutes get a coupon code for 10% off either the Atlas 1 or the Atlas 2 at geochron.com. Okay.
I'm sort of curious about something. On the overlay that you showed, where it was showing the lines going to all of the stations that were currently on the air and so forth, do you have any plans to add a feature where it would show the compass bearing from your QTH to the various stations?
Yeah, so what he's asking is an azimuth reading for, say, a DX station. So if you wanted to know where to point your beam, it would give you a heading.
Oh, and it wouldn't be the Great Circle route. It would be a different heading.
Yeah, it would be the Great Circle route.
Okay, but it would show it in degrees at your station.
Yes, and the line on the map.
Yeah. Would you prefer to see that heading at the origin or at the termination of your signal?
At the termination, because I'd be seeing several different stations at the same time, I presume. So it would be the termination of each station. And it would speed things up considerably, because right now, every time I want to call someone, I have to first go to qrz.com, type in their call sign just to find, and then have to click on, because it comes up on the wrong screen. So I have to click on the tab to give me the data on that station. So having it that way would speed things up considerably.
Oh, that's brilliant. So we already do something like that with our satellites, in that we show the heading, the speed and altitude on the satellites. And thank you for bringing this up. So I'll take that to my guys, and we'll see if we can't add that as a feature. My concern is that the screen, like the one you see behind me, would get super overly crowded if it showed a small azimuth heading at each termination of the Great Circle route from your location. But you can also filter out by bands, and so that would clean up the screen too. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. By the way, one other thing. On that screen, does it show the stations that you can hear, or does it show every station in the world that's broadcasting at the time? Because there's a big difference between that. It's only useful if it's going to show what you actually have the possibility of communicating with.
You could filter by call sign, and I would think that would be your call sign. So the way that I've used it is just an overall view of what's going on and by band. The DX from your location.
Okay. Yeah, it really depends on who you're focused on. In other words, what is the spotting network that you're using? So there's a bunch of different ones. So what he's asking is, if there's a spotting network in New York, well, obviously the propagation from New York is going to be different than Southern California. So, Bert, you have to pick a spotting network that is close to you or that has similar propagation to you. And there's a lot of ways to do this. So we can talk later about that.
Yeah, I've got. to answer that, just a second, we can go to, we can look at the menu. There it is.
What's the purchasing process for the ham radio module?
Sure. The ham radio map and any premium features that are attached to that are a part of any Atlas.
And so, but where do you go? Like, I want to buy that. What would be my process?
Oh yeah, go to geochron.com and then just click on the digital tab, and that'll take you to that.
The digital tab, and then I go to buy now.
Yep, sounds good.
Because the buy now takes me to buying. I already have the Atlas One. Is this, if you were talking about some kind of subscription? I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Sure. Okay, so the ham radio premium layer is not yet deployed. That's coming up in a month or two, so you're not going to see that on the website.
Okay, so just keep tuned. And I signed up for the newsletter, and I have your coupon code, so that all worked as expected.
Yeah, information for the new layers that come through the newsletter. They also appear as on-screen notifications on the Geochron itself. That you'll see, like a little pop-up box will go like, "Hey, there's a new layer that you can download right now." So you'll see that right on the Geochron 4K in your ham shack. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. Thank you so much, because I was just like, I want to get that.
Okay.
What do I need to do?
Thank you.
Okay.
So going back to the DX cluster question, can I do that real quick?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to look at the menu here, and you tell me if this is going to fix what you want. You should be seeing a menu that says DX cluster and RBN spots configuration. All right.
Yep.
So you can see that you can filter by call sign, and you can also filter by the country ID. You could turn on and off the DX clusters and the reverse beacon network and show the call signs, not show stuff, and then all the bands. So not being really great at DXing, does this solve what you were trying to solve?
Well, can you select where the information is coming from? So if it's coming in from New York, that's not going to help us. So we need to be able to select the cluster.
All right.
You see what I'm saying? So the DX cluster, you just have it on and off, but which DX cluster is it? There's many, many, many.
All right.
So you have to be able, because the guy in New York's not going to want the same cluster as what we have.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, and there's also
you,
the
Mike.
super cluster.
Yeah, we'll get you, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
mute yourself. Mute.
Well, you're the one that's typing while he's talking.
I'm not typing.
Okay.
All right, so that's a real requirement. If you need to select the cluster.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not useful because it's not even indicated what cluster it is, and there's so many of them. So you have to be able to select where you're getting the information. Does that make sense, Patrick?
Yep, I'm on it. That's a great one. That'll happen. We'll get on that Monday morning.
Hello, Patrick.
Hey.
Guess who? So, thank you very much. It was awesome. I'm sorry I wasn't here at the very, very beginning, but I did come in during it, and it was awesome. It was awesome. So I'm gonna let you know now that from the last email that you and I got, I'm not gonna upgrade my number one to a number two. I'm just gonna buy a number two. I'm putting a number one into my other room, and I'm gonna bring number two in here. And to be more, well, I just don't have enough. It's like all of us other hams, we don't have enough radios, so we go out and buy radios we really don't need. Well, I'm going to buy more Geochron clocks that I don't need, right? I mean, everybody agrees that. All right, Patrick, and thank you very much for coming out and talking to the group. Really appreciate it. Sure. One more thing, one more comment. You showed a slide a second ago, which you didn't show me before. I've never saw it before. The interface for the DX cluster, the interface for the ham, the new module, the ham overlay.
Yes.
I think we talked once in the past about possibly doing a web interface through the website and having like a personal portal that you can do those. Is that still a possibility? Because that would certainly be more reliable and than another app on our phones. And I just
Yes.
wanted to touch on that and ask you about that.
Sure. So the Geochron, as you know, is just operable through a remote like this. But the ADIF logs are uploaded through the website to your Geochron. That's how that's planned. Are you saying that you want to be able to adjust the configuration settings in your Geochron through a web browser?
Yeah, through the same location or the portal that we would have with our log files.
Yeah.
We can also do the rest of the configuration.
Oh, I like that. I like that too. Too many things. All right. So I'll put it on the list. It sounds good. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Patrick. 2 questions. Could you repeat the email address for the newsletter? I must have used the wrong one.
Okay.
And, go ahead.
The website is www.geochron.com. It's spelled the way it is below my chin.
But the newsletter?
The newsletter is on that. So if you go to that website and you've not been there before, a little pop-up will show up and say, hey, subscribe to the newsletter and I'll give you 10% off.
Okay, got it. And then for some of us cheap hams, if we are looking at a Hamfest flea market and we see an Atlas or even on eBay, how do you tell a version 1 from a version 2? Is it possible to tell the difference from the case or whatever?
Yes, I'll show you here.
Thanks.
And I'm going to disable my background so I can show you the thing. But so you're going to see my office. Just sorry about that. Just a moment.
Oh my God.
All right, hold on. Bingo, here I am. Okay. All right. So this is the version 2. The one we were talking about just recently. The version 2 looks like a little look like a little black sandwich. Okay, so this one will do everything. It'll show the gray line. It'll have a ham radio map, but it will not run future layers, including the upcoming ham radio premium layer. So if you see this at a flea market, it'll show the basic stuff, but as of this date forward, we're just not able to support this one anymore for new layers. So that's what this is. The Atlas looks like a candy bar. So this is an Atlas 1. The Atlas 2 is slightly larger. And this is what we're programming for now. So all the new stuff will be able to be run on these.
Yeah, the 2 versions of the Atlas is what I was concerned about.
Yeah.
How to tell them apart. Is just one bigger than the other?
Okay, so sure.
Not a big deal if you can't find it.
Does it say it on the side of the unit?
Yes. So you can see here, there's a little label right there. It'll say Atlas or Atlas 2. So I don't have an Atlas 2 in my hand right now, but the Atlas 2 is slightly larger. It will say Atlas 2 on the label. And instead of having, the way we've told them apart is that this is, if you can see these round, the Atlas 2 has a chevron right there. So it's also a little bigger.
Got it. Thanks.
Had a question for you, Patrick. I had a tour last night of FT8 and they showed the Maidenhead grid squares on the map.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody else here knows what I'm talking about, but I don't. It was an extended view of the grid squares, where Greenland looked like it was larger than the United States. It was just massive and had something to do with propagation. You should have that mode in there also. I think it was from RF Finder, if I'm not mistaken. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I can answer that. So the Maidenhead grid is shown in the is part of the layers that are coming up as far as ham radio.
Yeah, okay.
And and what you're also referring to, but we can't zoom. There's no zooming on the Geochron. So the Maidenhead grid is like, it shows, I don't know, I'm not sure what the number is, but somewhere closer, like 226 squares. So like a square would be the size of the Pacific Northwest, where I am.
Right.
The reason why Greenland is so huge is because the Mercator projection is trying to take a 3-dimensional image and put it into a flat
Yeah.
surface. No cartographer has ever gotten this right and ever will, because it's impossible to display it. So the truth is that Greenland is Africa, which looks the same size as Greenland in a Mercator projection. Africa is actually 17 times larger than Greenland in the real world on a sphere. Yeah. So super interesting map stuff. Real nerdy.
Right. My other layman question was, why does the sun have that figure 8?
Oh, yes, right. So I didn't mention that, but in the machine and in the digital, and I'm going to show you a picture of what I'll share my screen real quick so you can see it. Just a moment. Okay, so you should be seeing an upload of the ADIF network. In Mexico, there's a bright yellow spot. That bright yellow spot is at the top of a figure 8. And so that's called the analemma. So when a geochron moves, let me say this. If you took a picture of the sun every day at noon for 365 days throughout the whole year and made a composite photo of that picture of the sun at noon, where it would be high in the summer and low in the winter in the northern hemisphere, it would form the picture of a figure 8 in that composite photo. So what the figure 8 is trying to tell you on the Geochron is that the sun is at its zenith in its annual cycle. So right now, tomorrow is summer solstice. And so that's why the sun is at the top of the figure 8. Now, if you jump ahead 6 months, winter solstice, which is in late December, that sun on the figure 8 will be down at the bottom. So one of the miracles of the machine is that it does this mechanically over 365 days, just through the motors and the gears that are behind it. And it's also something that we included in Geochron Digital. Good.
You might also mention that the crossover point at the of the figure 8 is the equator.
Yeah. So the Earth is on a 23.4 degree axial tilt against the sun. So that's on a Mercator map, that's the Tropic of Capricorn at top and the Tropic of
Cancer.
No.
Cancer.
No, it's right here. Second. So the Tropic of Cancer, and so the way that the analemma, that figure 8, which is off to my left shoulder, is displayed right now, is that it's 23.4 degrees high on the map to show the summer solstice, and 23.4 degrees low to show 4 degrees low to show the winter solstice, and the very intersection of the middle of the analemma, when that is the equinox, both the autumnal and the spring equinox, that is exactly on the Mercator.
Can you show the a year-long cycle in high speed, to where, or a day cycle rather, where the gray line goes up and then goes down? That's really cool.
Yes, and so also I can. Just a moment. I have this file on my computer, and it's going to take me a second to find it. But while I do, that feature is shown on the Geochron Digital itself. It's in the menu, and you say Show High Speed, and it'll do this, so you can explain to people what's going on. This is what causes the seasons, because the sun is up here, and now there's no sun down here, and it's winter in the southern hemisphere when it's summer in the northern hemisphere. And people go, seasons, the sun, I get it. And all you have to do is you have to see this file I'm looking for right now. Just a second.
I was curious about your background. Are you a cartographer, or how did you come to this?
Yeah, well, geez, no. My first career was as a pianist. So I have a undergraduate and a master's degree in music. And then my middle career was as a construction manager up here for Fred Meyer, Walmart, and Home Depot. So I built those stores. I'm really good with paperwork and saying, how come that's not done yet? So, and then I dropped that, and I finished my MBA, and my MBA is I took my MBA business plan and turned that into a business. So that's that has to only do with telephone systems. So some days you'll find me, and I still do this job on this part-time, but it's just my wife and I that run a home business working on telephone systems. So like, the bag and the gear, and there's recordings and all sorts of stuff that goes along with that. And I have 220 companies here in the Pacific Northwest that are on contract for me to take care of their phone system, the largest of which is DocuSign. So I got really good at that business and got it down to a part-time level. And then I got bored, and then I bought a Geochron mechanical, like the one that's behind David in his picture. And it was broken, and I realized, because I was like, Geochron is fantastic. And then the shop was a mile from my house. And so I was like, they're going to have to fix this. And so I took it down to the shop, and I met everybody, and I went, this company needs me. And I didn't know it at the time, but the owners of the company, who were close to retirement, and the company was not doing well. I said, hey, I came back 30 days later, just after an appointment downtown. And I said, stop by. And I said, hey, if you were interested in selling the company, I'd like to be a part of that conversation. And they looked at me, and they had decided to sell it that week. And I didn't know that. So it was sort of a convergence. Like, I had been picked by maybe like James Kilberg, the inventor, who's since passed. But I have this sense of destiny about Geochron with me, and it has been really tough. My wife says, Patrick, I'm so sorry I wasn't a better helpmate to you. I would have told you that this is a bad idea. Because although we're successful, it has come at the cost of these gray hairs and these over here too. So it's been a rough go for Patrick, but we made something beautiful, and I'm proud of that. So that's how I that's the short version of how I got into Geochron.
Patrick,
So, yeah.
Patrick, you need to tell everybody about the day you walked in there. This is Mike, by the way, KN6 Echo.
There you are.
Yeah, here I am. My camera was pointed somewhere else. I wanted to show the beautiful clock. When you walked in there the first time and you told them that you had one, you wanted to get it fixed, and they had those index cards with everybody's serial number.
Yeah. Okay. So we live in a world where, like this little version 2 I showed you, everything's mass produced, everything is in China or something. And so I bought this mechanical clock, and it's heavy, it's real, it's 40 pounds of machine. So I got it off. I bought it. It was broken. It was used. I couldn't have at the time. I didn't want to afford a new one, but it was busted. So when I took it in, I'm like carrying it, and they're like, okay, great. Just put it down there on that counter, and I'm going to go find out where this clock came from. So they went to the Della, who was the admin at the time, went to the back of the room, and she went to this card, like Dewey Decimal card catalog file with like all these little drawers, and just started going through the years. And then she came back out, and she said, and it looked like she had this piece of paper, right? Like, looked like this. And she goes, okay, so this clock was made in 1986. And then it came back to us in 1992 for a new map, and then we lost track of it. But here it is. And I just was like, what? I fell in love with it right then. I'm like, because it was like, somebody knew that this existed. It just didn't come off an assembly line. So that's why you walk into the machine shop, which it's no Apple store. It's a machine shop, and it's greasy, and it's organized. But it's like, we're the only place in the world that will work on these mechanical clocks. And I'll be darned if I'm the guy to put that to bed, because, it's expensive and because it's difficult to do. So I feel a real strong connection with this real piece of hardware that has history. And so that's what made me fall in love with the whole thing. So, by the way, Mike, you're muted now, but I'd spent like a whole afternoon with Mike there in that room where you're sitting, and he talked my ear off. And a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you today about the ham radio premium layer came from that conversation. And I'm so grateful for that. When I got back on my motorcycle, and I live in Portland, and I was visiting him in Los Angeles, I actually discovered that I had lost my license, my driver's license. And so it was at my brother's house. So I went back to my brother, who lived a little bit north of you, and spent the night in his garage retrieving my driver's license. And then the next day, I rode 1,080 miles in 20 hours to get back home in time. It was a really, really long trip. I went through Reno because I wanted to get over 1,000 miles because I'm adventurous like that. But anyway, that was quite the adventure after I saw you there, Mike.
Patrick, it was my pleasure, and it was very, very enjoyable, our time together, which was hours. I think it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So take care, and I really appreciate you making it on this Zoom meeting for our club, because we have a very progressive, very large progressive club. There's a lot of really smart people here, and now they're all going to gain more knowledge from you and your product. And I hope everybody has one at the end of the day. All right, now you can mute me again, David.
All right. I am still looking for that video, but I'm happy to take more questions.
Hey, Patrick, just as a thought, would it be an idea to have a paid web page where people could sign up, like people sign up for Netflix and Hulu, but on their screen would see your product instead of having to buy a separate device?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if we did that and had a stream? It would have to stream from our servers, right? Because there wouldn't be a physical thing. We looked into that, but unfortunately, those TVs don't have enough processing horsepower to display it and render it in 4K according to what the configuration you want to see as. But what if we had like an Android or a phone app where it would control the smart TV in front of you, and there was no mechanical, there was no hardware interface. It was just you and your Android app going through our website, and then you call up exactly what you just want to see, and then it would start streaming that directly to your unit, directly to your TV. So that way, it could stream 4K all day. All these smart TVs can stream 4K all day long, but they can't render in 4K. That would have to be generated on our server side. Unfortunately, what I just said is like $500,000 in programming. So maybe I'll get there.
I have a question.
Sure.
How much bandwidth does it take continuous streaming? And it looks like you can use the Ethernet if you don't want to use the Wi-Fi, right? Other than just for uploads. And the 5 volt, does it come with an adapter, or what is the current requirement at the 5 volts?
So it is okay. There's while there are USB ports on this computer, it plugs into a regular wall wart at 120 volts or 260 overseas. So it's just I don't have one here, but it's just basically like any other piece of gear. It's not powered off another computer by USB 5 volt. Okay, so and then your other question was, bandwidth.
The bandwidth.
Yeah, so because it's rendering so much of its own stuff locally in the unit, the bandwidth that it takes off is about between 20 and 25 megabytes a day. So really small. It's just sipping vectors from the server, basically. It's not downloading maps or streaming. Updating about every 15 minutes, depending on what layers you're looking at.
Oh, that's good to know for some people to have remote locations. So thank you for that.
Yeah, right. And then also there is Wi-Fi and Ethernet, depending on which one you want to use. If you have a really complicated Wi-Fi network, like it's hidden and underneath all kinds of protocols, it may have some difficulty with that. That's come up from time to time. But if you've got a regular Wi-Fi that's password protected, no problem. One of the things when we sell to the government is that they don't want Wi-Fi in anything because it's hackable. So one of the things that we did when we sold to the Space Force, they're like, we want to buy one, we want to buy a couple, but we can't have Wi-Fi on it. So can you disable the Wi-Fi? And I'm like, well, I can remove the drivers off the unit for you special. And then also I went out to my garage and I just like clipped the antenna off. And they're like, that's good. So that was the end of that. My source, other vendors have told me that Space Force doesn't care, Air Force doesn't care. They're just like, clip the antenna. But for the CIA, they don't care. But if you are the NSC, they'll tear the damn thing apart to find out if there's still a Wi-Fi chip inside of it. And if there is, then you're in trouble because you have to sign a paper that says that there isn't. So a little bit of background on our government. Other questions?
What's the smallest size 4K television do you think can be used? Because I have a smallish ham shack and I cannot afford that huge big screen TV.
Sure. Yeah. So at least 32 inches. If it's if it's less than 32, you're not going to be able to make out some of the text, particularly around small cities.
So then the next question is, what's the ideal size?
80. Okay, so I will tell you that here in my studio, I use a 42 inch.
55, 65, they're all okay?
Beautiful. The bigger, the better. But you can easily make out everything standing a couple feet away from it at 42 inches. And just make sure it's 4K. 1080 doesn't look very good.
Yeah, I think Craig had a question.
Yeah, thanks, David. So Patrick, one thing I'd draw your attention to when you're asking the question about DX clusters and home QTHs all having different reception on propagation.
Right.
One solution would be, instead of you trying to reinvent the wheel on all of that, you might go look at a website called hamalert.org.
Okay.
They've actually combined clusters with PSK reporter, with SOTA activations, to where you can go in and custom configure what alerts you want to see.
Okay.
So you get it's basically based on a notification that you get notifications on your iPhone or your Android device as to what's showing up. And the way they work with the QTH is, I can set for region 3. I want to see only clusters that are being reported in region 3, which is basically the West Coast.
Yeah.
So if I'm, anywhere in the world, obviously you're looking for an international marketplace. If I'm in Germany, I'd want to see, just the clusters that are being reported within that region. So that way somebody could dial things down. So, and I believe HamAlert has an API as well. So, that may be a route to go, to where if somebody just joined up within HamAlert had the API connecting to you, then you would just enable that API on the Geochron, and you'd get all the data that HamAlert's going.
Yeah.
So the other thing would be that if you're going to do a subscription model, my preference would be that it's an annual subscription.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I would also encourage you to do is, so in ham radio, other than QRZ using advanced features, they have a subscription model. There may be some ham logging software that has subscription models. All these entities like PSK Reporter, they don't use subscription, but they do offer APIs. So I'm not sure if they charge for their APIs, but I would think that you want people evangelizing your product as much as possible, and I think you want your product being complementary to all these other cool things that people have already set up that you can utilize. So however you organize your business model, I would really encourage you that you think it through, to where the entities like HamAlert or PSK Reporter are seeing some benefit from your subscription, and that in turn that they're promoting your product. So it's like, I wouldn't try to go to the bank on your subscription model, but obviously there's cost associated with all these APIs and people's servers, and the more demand there is, there's growth, and you gotta do that. And I think people would recognize that. I think for you personally, it's like trying to sell as many products as possible. So you know, once you get this going, you know, I could easily see that it's something that, you know, hams, when they like something, they're talking every day, right? So, you know, if this becomes the subject of a conversation in a QSO, that's a good thing for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks, David.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We just realized that selling the hardware and then providing lifetime services to the hardware was a great way to go out of business. So we're trying to sort of find the balance between all those things right now. Yeah. So
yeah,
thank you
there
for
is
that.
there are things in amateur radio that they charge for. There's like a program called VARA, VARA, because if you're not a ham yet, probably don't know. And they charge, I think it's $28. I think it's a one-time fee, but all it does is allows your radio to transmit in a digital mode.
Oh.
And that's all it does. I mean, that's a lot if you're a ham.
Yeah.
But yours provides so much more. It's a constant service that's totally changing, as opposed to this guy writes a software,
plug in,
allows you to use it, end of story.
Yeah. Yeah. So ours is on the development side, when, you know, there's GSA, there's NASA, there's all sorts of different feeds that we are maintaining. Just this week, our precipitation layer got messed up because somebody at NOAA changed the code, and so we spent half a day trying to figure out what happened. And so it just takes constant maintenance to fix the things that we've already done that are already established. Yeah, we're sorting that out. But thank you for the advice.
And if the government allows you to charge one price to the CIA and another price to hams, that could help your business and a relationship with, there's in companies that sell antennas, and the government says you must sell to the government at the same price you sell to hams. So what used to be $100 for a ham antenna is now like $1,500 for a ham.
Wow.
You guys know what that is? You guys know. It's
so for the government doesn't have any say on what we charge them, or we can charge whatever we could. But I will say, but you know, they just bought it at the same price that everybody else does. We weren't fussy about it. We've sold. So the product differentiation is where where we're heading from just a little business talk. I think what'll happen eventually is that we'll have a dedicated ham radio Geochron Digital, so that I can send that. I can sell that through my website, and I can also send it to my ham radio distributors like DX and Gigaparts and a couple others. And then I can take a generic ham radio one that doesn't include the generic Geochron Digital that doesn't include the ham radio map, and I can sell that on my website, and I can also sell it on Amazon, because I don't want to specifically undercut my ham radio enthusiasts who are also distributors. I want you guys to buy from them and from me, and I don't want you to buy it on Amazon. This is one of the problems that we've run into, because those guys are doing a great job. They're taking it to trade shows. People are seeing it there. I don't want it to be on Amazon. They're not doing anything for me. So,
Patrick,
before we get much farther, I wanted to draw Tamitha into the conversation, because I think bringing some space weather to the Geochron is an absolute game changer. So I know she made some comments earlier, but I really want to see something like that on the Geochron, some sunspots data and propagation data included in that. So, and then also I want to, since Tamitha's here, I'm going to twist her arm a little bit to come back for us maybe in the fall before school starts, because things are changing so quickly with the sun. I think in another several months we're going to see some real changes, or hopefully. And so, Tamitha, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of let Patrick know that I'm very much aware of how painful operational, getting data that is operational, that doesn't change, that is constantly there 24/7 with no server outages, always got to be up there. Don't make changes to the protocols. Don't make drastic changes to your database, to the access. I understand that completely. And so, you know, that kind of thing is something that is absolutely in the forefront of my mind all the time, because there's a plethora of space weather data out there and very few sources that are that would be considered operational from the point of view of so many clients relying on them that they just can't go down, right? Too big to fail. So I would make sure, you know, in the future, when you are ready to do something like a space weather package, I would make sure that you had access to, you know, that we would put forward the types of data products that are operational, that would make it the easiest for your developers to, I don't want to say set it and forget it, because nothing's like that. No. But it's about as close as you can get to set it and forget it in you know, the digital world. Yeah. But we really would need to discuss things that go so far beyond ham radio, because, for example, you talk about one of your favorite aspects being Scott Kelly, right? Yeah. I could guarantee you would get every single astronaut on the planet from every country buying a Geochron if you had the space. For instance, if you had Avidose, which is a radiation dose measurement that is being used in the ESA space weather prediction centers. If you had every member of the SHRAG, these are people who are personal friends of mine, by the way. I have people who run the space radiation analysis group at Johnson Space Center. As a matter of fact, I trained one of them. I was the thesis advisor of one of them, who's going to probably take over that particular department. They give information every day. They talk to the surgeon every day aboard the ISS to make sure that the astronauts can do a clean EVA without a radiation storm going on, and what the risk is. So we're talking about people easily in NASA. We're talking about people in ESA. We're definitely talking about people in the Space Force, you know, in the Pentagon. We're talking about people who would have a much, much better feel for how space weather affects them. And I think Geochron would be an incredible tool for that. And then being able to overlay, on top of everything else, being able to overlay ham radio and HF radio, because you know that so many military people and astronauts, they have to be ham radio operators. All of these people would be able to overlay ham radio layers on top of space weather and everything else. Geochron could become a very invaluable tool, not just for military, for aviation, for ISS, but also for civil and commercial, which is growing incredibly quickly. For example, Starlink, right? We have issues with that, and GPS. There's so many different ways that space weather ends up affecting all these signals, not just in the HF band, but all the way up into gigahertz and the gigahertz range. So you could very, very quickly become a centralized focus for space agencies all around the world, aviation industries all around the world. Geochron could be, if you added a space weather package, could really, really, it could very much blow up the digital side of things.
Wow. Do I need to talk to you or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think they need to talk to me? Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, talk to her.
Question about it.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruno.
Okay, thank you. This is Bruno WRAFK. I'm just curious about the Geochron. If we lose the server, or say you lose the server, we lose the internet, what basic features remain available on the 4K digital? I know we won't be able to stream, but does the product become inoperative, or am I still able to use basic features that are built in? Over.
Yeah, all the basic features will still work. The live layers, like the DXing or the earthquake or the precipitation layers, they will remain frozen in time until you come back. But the gray line and the map moving and the different map sets that are available, those are all still there.
Okay, thank you. That's very good.
Mm-hmm. And I found that video that you were looking for, finally.
Okay, great. Let's watch that.
That's just a moment.
Amazing.
So this will help you understand. This is a video that is embedded in in the Geochron. It's not streamed like if you let us internet, but it's so you can show people this is what happens over the course of a whole year. Here we go. Are you seeing a black screen in front of you?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up. All right, here we go. So this is one whole year. You can see the analemma coming up the top, summer solstice, taking 6 months to come all the way down to the bottom, crossing the equator down to the Tropic of Cancer. And now winter solstice as the sun moves, as the earth moves at a 23.4 degree axial tilt against the earth. So once people see this, they go, oh, kids, we have a number of these in schools. And you just play this for them. And that's worth a week worth of instruction in 10 seconds. Love it. Love it. So that's why we included that as a movie inside the menu on the Geochron Digital, all of them.
So I'm wondering if we can get that, if that clip. Is there any way that we can download that thing?
The best way, sure.
It's on every Geochron.
Yes, it is.
Send
me an email. I'll send you a link.
I have to say, actually, I found it on the internet. I've seen it. So it's on your website. If you dig into, if you try to dig into that and use some search terms, I've actually seen that one literally on the web when I was trying to understand how the whole thing was displayed with the gray line.
Yeah.
So I know it is possible to find it on the net.
I'm sure I posted it at some point, but I don't remember. It took me 5 minutes to find it.
You would think it'd be on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah. I'm happy to send you the source file if you just send me an email, patrick@geochron.com.
Okay, so I think we're coming up on 2 hours here. So what I'm going to do is end the recording. And Patrick,
I have one question first about the discount code.
I'm not going to end the session. I'm just letting Patrick know that we're going to stop the recording, and that you can continue to ask Patrick questions for as long as he's available. So with that, I'll just stop the recording and